This is also something you and I talked about before. It was when both Sanders and Clinton both came out with their Wall Street plans, and there's differences to it. And obviously, I would love it if there was a 21st century Glass-Steagall. There's some good things in Clinton's plan as well. But also, when you talk about, in some ways, even what's possible, the reality is most likely there will be a Republican House. Nothing is actually going to most likely get passed, at least in the first 2 years of either presidency, Sanders or Clinton. But one thing we have talked about, and you and I, and even Elizabeth Warren wrote a big piece on this in the New York Times, is how the next president has immense power in actually who they appoint to these regulatory committees. And, when you look at right now, you wrote two pieces. I just want to spend a little bit of time on this, how both... Well, what is... So just, David, what's Timothy Geithner and Eric Holder up to these days? Are they up to anything that makes you feel really good about them as public servants?
So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, personnel is policy. There's no question about that. I think Warren has been really great this cycle in firing that home over and over and over again, showing. She put out a report that I wrote about how the next president needs to be much better on corporate crime, that the Justice Department has basically let not just banks, but all sorts of corporate offenders get away without indictments, without prosecutions, and with slap-on-the-wrist settlements that shareholders pay that mean absolutely nothing to the executives. Eric Holder, when he left the Attorney General's office, he went back to Covington and Burling, the white-collar defense firm that he was at for a decade before becoming Attorney General. In fact, Covington and Burling moved to a new headquarters, which was 300 feet from a condo that Holder bought before going back there. And they also held open a corner office for Eric Holder while he was Attorney General, while he was making negotiations with clients of Covington and Burling, bank clients. And in his first public job that we know about, since returning to Covington and Burling, he's helping a large multinational conglomerate telecom in Africa try to avoid a multi-billion-dollar fine that they incurred for breaking the law in Africa. So that's basically who he was. As far as Tim Geithner, he left the Treasury Department. He moved to a private equity firm named Warburg Pincus. And private equity firms, when they start new funds, they have the partners. He's a partner. They have them put in their own money to show their investors that their interests are aligned. Tim Geithner didn't have that kind of money, so he got a giant line of credit with J.P. Morgan Chase, a bank that he theoretically regulated while at the New York Federal Reserve and in other ways while at the Treasury Department. And I don't think that this is necessarily, there's anything untoward about that in particular, that particular loan. But what it says is that there's a special club, basically, that you and I aren't in, that can walk into a JP Morgan Chase and get a multi-million-dollar line of credit because you work for and with or in social circles of people that have business before J.P. Morgan Chase and people who are just marinated in the same worldview. And it's this kind of soft corruption, it's this mind share corruption that we see in certain echelons of the Democratic Party. And it's really part of the animating principle of the Sanders campaign is to say that this is wrong, to have this cozy relationship between Washington and Wall Street. We need a more diverse set of opinions, a more diverse set of views, and a more of a willingness to go after power.